But like I said, John Carter, he eventually gets sent to Mars, and that was something I was never really always confused me, is that we were talking about this a little earlier, where he was like when he escapes from the Calvary base, he a lot of things are confused about this. First off, he runs into he's being chased by the Calvary. He comes across these Apache Indians, and he starts talking to them in Apache, or whatever their language is, and we never get a translation. We never really know what that thing was about, because, like I said, there's a number of translation, and one of the cavalrymen goes like berserk and starts shooting at the Indians, even though they're outnumbered and outgunned, and then the cavalry commander, who is like the enemy at this point, gets shot.
Played by crap, I'm blanking on his name. The guy from Breaking Bad, Malcolm in the Middle.
Huh. But he goes back and rescues him, and they never explain why. He says something about I have my reasons or something like that, or just something like that.
I think it was just supposed to be like honor. He wouldn't leave someone to be, because he wasn't killed, he was just wounded.
Yeah.
So, wounded cavalrymen that had just shot at them, they probably wouldn't have done nice things to him, I think it was just supposed to be his honor as a warrior kind of thing.
Maybe. But like I said, they never bring this back up again. The only thing we ever get is that when he returns to Earth afterwards, and we're jumping really ahead here, and he comes back and there's this skeleton. I guess it was just like an indicator of how much time had passed. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, they don't specify how much time had passed, but it's enough time for his clothes to make noise when he starts moving.
And the cavalry commander to die and completely be a bag of bones and stuff.
Yeah, so
And,
at least months, maybe years. It's unclear.
I guess like when you...
Although he didn't really seem to spend all that much time on Mars. If I were to try to put a period to that, I'd say like 2 weeks.
Something like that,
But
yeah.
that's like not anywhere near enough time for that to happen, so... But then again, you're dealing with interstellar travel. There could be a time differential or something.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, too, is that they bring up at one point that he wasn't sent to Mars. He was copied to Mars.
Yeah.
He was, as he put it, he was telegraphed to Mars. And that, I don't know, that seems kind of weak to me, but I guess it's like if that's the original story.
Yeah, I'm sure that was in the original. Which kind of raises an interesting question of whether or not he's immortal on Mars. Because they make it clear at one point that if his body on Earth dies, his body on Mars will die. But his body on Earth was in that thing for like months.
Supposedly.
It had to have been months because the one body had decayed to the bones. Without food, without water, without anything. So, does he keep aging on Earth? And if so, does the copy of him age? That whole relationship there is not really explained.
This movie keeps blowing my mind.
But I suppose they didn't really need to.
And something I actually didn't like about the movie was that this was like maybe a 2-hour movie, maybe a little over 2-hour movie.
Like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, something like that. But it felt like it was over 3 hours. It was...
It did feel like a long time. It made me wonder how many of the original books were in that movie, or if it was one book, then they covered it pretty thoroughly, I guess.
Yeah, but my point of this is that actually there were a lot of scenes in this where I felt it was just padding, or just that it was not so much padding, but just that, I get it, move on. And
I didn't feel that way. I felt it was pretty tight. There were actually a couple things that I wanted that I didn't get.
Really?
Like, this is going to sound really, really petty, but I actually felt kind of cheated by this. There was a scene where he's about to go into this big fight, where it's like him versus like 1,000 of those 4-armed alien things.
Another tribe of them or something.
Yeah, they're like more feral than the one he dealt with, or at least more warlike. And he's getting ready for the fight, and just suddenly he has his sword in his hand. They don't have the shot of him actually drawing the sword. I actually feel kind of cheated by that, That is like a big
It's a big dramatic moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we're getting ready to do something, we're getting ready to kick ass kind of thing when they draw their sword. They didn't have it. It's petty, but I noticed it and I remember it the next day. So,
I actually didn't notice that, but I'm not that observant. But my point of this is that I just there were so many points where I thought, okay, the movie's going to end here, and it's going to be picked up in a sequel. Because I
think they wanted to do. They don't like to leave open endings like that unless the sequel is guaranteed. Like if you look at if you look at anything, if you look at not just in movies, in books too, but like the first Star Trek or Star Wars, could have stood on its own.
Yeah.
But Empire Strikes Back couldn't. It was very open at the end. It didn't resolve anything. And if you look at books, like the first Wheel of Time, the first Harry Potter, they could have stood on their own. That could have been the end, and they didn't get stories that continued into the next one until it was established and there were guaranteed sequels. I can see not wanting to leave the audience hanging.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting at.
But I don't know. It just like I said, it just felt like it was going on forever, and I just kept thinking this. Okay, it's been way too long. This is where it's going to end, even though it's right in the middle of something. Because like I said, to me it was there were so many points where it was repeating the same message over and over again, or it was the characters were being so immensely dense that I figured it out. Why can't you? And
I don't know. I didn't get that. I felt it moved along fairly well. Like I said, look, there are a few points where it feels like they cut out scenes that would have gone into something, would have explained something. For example, when there's a point where he tells his nephew, after his nephew reads the whole story, at the end, he saves the day on Mars, basically becomes a king, marries the princess, happily ever after stuff.
But he gets tricked and teleported back to Earth.
Yeah, this monk just shows up and slaps him with the thing, and he goes back to Earth, and he spends all these years looking for. He gets sent there by an amulet. So he spends all these years and his fortune trying to find another amulet.
Because he knows they have some presence on Earth.
Yeah.
And
so he's telling. This is at the end of his journal. He's telling his nephew about all this, and said he finally found one and went to Mars, and he needs his nephew to guard his mausoleum. And he tells his nephew that if his body on Earth dies, his body on Mars will die. That was never established. Maybe he just assumed because he was a copy, but it didn't have a scene where he finds that out,
Yeah, and it can't be a trick because in the end this whole thing was a trap to lure one of the monk characters in, so we could kill him and steal his amulet.
Yeah.
So he had to be right about that.
Yeah. So like I said, maybe he just assumed. Of course, I don't understand why at that point the monks are still fixated on him,
He's the one that got away. He's even Jaws went back with the Brody sons. It's
went all the way to Bermuda.